Welcome to Aurora Connects Season 4. This is Episode 4 for Friday, November 19th, 2021. Father, Daughter, the Playwright and Company. As always, I'm Associate Artistic Director Dawn Monique Williams, and I'm joined by Artistic Director Josh Costello. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Dawn. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Happy opening.
It was such a great night last night, having the theater filled with people, real, live, living, breathing human beings is just, we missed it so much, and it was so great and such a lovely performance by our actors and such a lovely play. It's really, it just feels so good to be back making theater for the first time in a year and a half.
Oh, yeah, I bet. I'm super excited. I'll get to see it for the first time on Tuesday. When I lead the post-show discussion, which I'm really looking forward to. Well, as always, I want to let our viewers know that we love having them participate with us along in the chat. I'm monitoring all the chats, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch TV. But if you don't want to write us there, you can always reach us at connects@auroratheater.org. That's connects@auroratheater.org. We love hearing from you. We love knowing what you want to see on the show.
And I want to tell you all that subscriptions are on sale for our 30th season, the 2021-2022 season. This is the second show of the season, and tickets are on sale now. We're running through December, and I so hope that you can all come and see the show. And if you are not in the Bay Area, we will be streaming the show, or if you are in the Bay Area but are not comfortable coming into the theater, we're streaming the show during the final week of the run in December, so you can see it from the comfort of your home as well. Tickets are also on sale for the rest of the season. We have 3 more plays after Father, Daughter, and they're all going to be fantastic. I'm so excited to welcome you back to our theater. You can get tickets or subscriptions by going to our website at auroratheater.org. And while you're there, if you are so moved, you can click the donate button on the top right and help us get back on our feet and keep making live theater for you.
Well, with that, Josh, should we go ahead and bring on our guests?
Let's do it. So we have a remarkable group of people here today. We have Kait Kerrigan, who's the playwright of Father, Daughter. Kait is an award-winning playwright, lyricist, and book writer, and her work has been developed and performed off-Broadway and internationally. Hi, Kait.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We also have the director of the play, M. Graham Smith. Graham is a San Francisco-based director, educator, and producer. He has directed all over the Bay Area and around the country. In April, he directed his first full-length film, a hip-hop musical adaptation of As You Like It, with music and lyrics by Nicole Austin, produced by the American Conservatory Theater. Graham has been involved with Aurora for a long time through the Global Age Project, our new play discovery program. Graham, thank you so much for making your Aurora directorial debut and for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, we have our remarkable cast for Father, Daughter. Sam Jackson is familiar to Aurora audiences from Splendor, Exit Strategy, and Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, as well as from her really wonderful musical performances at 2 of our annual galas. Sam, also, let's see, you have performed at Shotgun, other theaters around the Bay Area. You're a company member of Nice Tan Comedy, a queer WOC-led sketch comedy group based in San Francisco. Sam, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
And William Thomas Hodgson is making his Aurora debut in this play. William has played Romeo and other roles at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. He's been seen locally at Cal Shakes, Berkeley Rep, all over the place, and he is a co-founder of Oakland Theater Project. William, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having us. Excited.
So I thought we could start with Kait. If you could just tell us a little bit about this play and how it is connected. It's called Father, Daughter. This is the world premiere, and as it is called Father, Daughter, I'm sure there are connections. I know there are connections between your own father and your relationships, and I'd love to hear you talk about the play and those connections.
I actually just found some notes that I wrote about it when I was first starting to write it a couple of days ago, which was really trippy and illuminating, because when you go back, you sort of end up telling yourself the story of your story. But when you actually go back and read what you were trying to do, it's kind of illuminating and interesting. I got married to my husband, and in the process of as you do. And in the process of planning the wedding and getting married, I started to realize that my relationship with my partner was having an impact on my relationship with my father. And it was opening up my relationship with my father in a way that I didn't anticipate. And that came out of the ways in which my relationship with my husband had opened me up and created a lot more space for me to feel safe and vulnerable and talk about things that I didn't always talk about. And so I started thinking about that when I was looking to do a play for two people, and I was really interested in the way in which you could continue to surprise the audience and force the audience to think that they know what the extent of the play could be, and keep changing how big the play is, in spite of the fact that you only have two actors and you will only ever have two actors. And so from the jump, I knew what I wanted to do in the final scene, which I will not reveal at this moment, but I knew that I wanted this expanse of this father and this daughter, and to find a way to both keep them very separate, and then find a way to connect them at the end, and pull those two threads of story together in a way that is theatrical, but also really surprising. So that was sort of the genesis of it. I think, I realized as I was dating my husband, I realized that I started dating him around the same time that my dad started dating his wife at the time, and that was really surprising to me. I'd grown up sort of always comparing myself to my mother, and my mom had me when she was 20. And so from the time I was 20 going forward, I would think, oh my God, if I was 25, I was like, oh my God, I'd have a 5-year-old, and that would be insane. And I'd always played that game. But then all of a sudden at 30, I was like, oh my God, my dad was getting married. He was dating this person too. Oh my God, he got married around the same time I did. That's a totally, I thought of them as adults, as opposed to feeling very young. And I suddenly was realizing that they were going through things that were, I don't know, I had a new sympathy for him and a new way of looking into his relationship. And it was at a time when I felt very capable, because I'd seen this change in our relationship. I felt very capable of looking for empathy and trying to understand my own childhood a little bit more, through the experiment of trying to write dialogue for a person that I felt was hard to understand. And as soon as you start to write dialogue for somebody, they become a fiction, for me at least. And so as soon as I started doing that, I started making things up and making it as dramatic and charged as I could, and made up lots of details. But those essential relationships were they were born out of my real experience.
Yeah. And William and Sam, you play the father and the daughter, but then you also play the girlfriend of the father, and William, you play the boyfriend of the daughter. How was it for you, with having Kait as part of the process, working on this new play and trying to navigate playing these two sets of characters?
What a big question. It was I want to say a very welcome challenge. It's definitely a challenge just to come back from Panorama to a 2-person show. And then also to come back and play two very different characters that, for me, thankfully, both of them live inside of me somewhere. One a bit more than the other. I think Miranda is much more kind of rooted in me than Risa is. But yeah, there was a lot of very specific movement work and voice work, vocal work that we had to do in order to make these characters live outside of our bodies so that you could also see them as well, which is an ever continuing challenge and journey.
Yeah, it was kind of great to play the two sides of one coin too, because in a lot of ways the characters are juxtaposed against each other. For Miranda's life, I think the father sometimes can be the grit, and then Lewis gets to be a solve, and so there's the gymnastics of just being on stage and going back and forth between those characters, which I feel like it's an experiment in humanity. Two human beings in one body kind of reveals something about existence, but then to have them, the duality of the story is also like just another aspect that was really a fun challenge.
I would love to jump in on that, because I think one of the experiences that I had for the first time, I mean, I've done readings of this play, but I've never actually gotten to spend any time really with it in space. And all of you did. Because of the pandemic and because I'm on the other side of the country, I was only there for a few previews, but I learned so much from the process of sitting and watching you all navigate the space together. And I learned so much about how much I had an instinct that the interstitial material, these liminal moments between where you change character, or between the scene changes, was really important. And that's where there's a dance moment in this play that felt really fundamental to me, and also like was a very strange thing to do in readings. And every time you did a reading, everybody kind of looked at me like I was nuts, but it felt like the point of the play to me. So there we would be like reading a stage direction for 5 minutes. But the actual experience of watching you all in that space and feeling that, like allowing the audience to feel that fuzziness of when you're one character versus the other one, and feel that humanity and the fact that there is kind of both in everyone, I think was really exciting for me and thrilling.
Love to jump in with a question. I'll start with Graham, just in terms of what this process has been like to collaborate with Kait. We had you all do a developmental reading a year ago, quite exactly, almost to the day, a year ago. And I know that you've worked on new plays before. Graham, what about this experience, given it was happening during the pandemic and the show was gonna happen, then it wasn't, and what was that collaborative process like?
It was odd to never be in the same room with Kait until previews. But we did get to spend a lot of time together, and I really think this is probably because of the adjustments that we had to make during pandemic in terms of how we were working, that by the time we were in rehearsals for this show, we were already so used to being able to do video calls. And so Kait was often, remotely in our rehearsal room. And that's something that I had never done on another process before. I know other people have, but it just seemed so normal because we had all been doing this as part of our 20 months of Panorama, that it felt like, okay, of course, Kait's going to be in the room and she's going to be on a little screen. And, I don't know how adequate that felt to you, Kait, in terms of like what you were able to perceive and not perceive that you needed. But for us, it was this incredible tool that whenever we had questions for Kait, we could just turn to the screen and say, Kait, what do you think about this? Or what's the answer to this question? Or does this line still feel right to you, given what we've just made a choice about? How was it for you, Kait?
I would say it felt good until I got in the room with everyone, and then that felt really good. And I suddenly got very sad for all the time that I didn't get to be in the room with all of you, because you all had so much information about these characters. And one of my favorite parts of being in rehearsal is to sit quietly and watch people listening to people wrestle with the text, and then trying to fix the text to make it work better. Because there's wrestling that's good wrestling that actors ought to be doing, and that is just the actor process. And then there's sometimes where you notice that you're like, oh, that's just, I shouldn't have I made a problem there that was, it's not a necessary problem and doesn't help anybody. And so like being able to respond in that way and like trim and just like fix things in that way, I suddenly like in the room over previews was like, oh, I see a little something I could do there to make this line a little bit more fluid for this person, and therefore it would make it better for everybody. But it's minor. The big stuff all felt really good, and I think that there is no substitute for being in the room and something. It's a little like watching. I'm so thrilled that we're streaming this, not because I think it's going to be the pinnacle of watching this play, but because I think it will make people want to see this play in a room with people doing this play, because there is something so ineffable and so incredible about what you learn and being in space with another body. And so in the same way that there was that interstitial liminal space that I believed in with this play, I feel like that's the thing I missed in this process. Like you and I spent a lot of time talking outside of the classroom, outside of the rehearsal room. And so I feel like we know each other pretty well. And I'm just so excited to do more things with you in the future. And then with Sam and William, I feel like I got like the slightest glimpse of like what our friendships can be. And I'm so excited about that. But like, I felt like it started during previews when I was there. So it's that ineffable stuff that's so hard to get. But on a technical level, I think we did pretty good.
I'm curious if I could ask Sam and William a question about process and our process. You know, one of the things that I really missed the most during Panorama in all of the Zoom work that we've done is the sound of laughter and the way that, you know, performers work with an audience when they're delivering material that's funny. And there's a lot of material in this play that's really funny, but because of our COVID protocols, we really had a very closed rehearsal room until very late, you know, in the game. I feel like we had like a few sprinklings of people for like final dress rehearsal, but not the number of people that we would normally have. We had one designer run through where there were about 10 audience members in the room. And so it wasn't really until we got to first preview that you really got to experience where laughter would come and how to work with that laughter. And I just wonder if you could share your process with us as you discovered how to do that again with an audience after such a long time of working with the silence of Zoom.
I mean, for me, I think that I don't think I had to like relearn it necessarily. That's what feels like home. So it felt really good to like come home to an audience that is laughing at moments that I didn't realize were funny or forgot were funny or what have you. Like that's the magic of having the first audience, you know? So I think there was just a lot of joy in that first preview for me because of those things and these surprises. And like I went up on lines and it didn't matter. And like all these different things that come with live theater that I was able to experience again, just made it a very special return. But I don't think I had to didn't feel like I had to relearn anything. It's like riding a bike, you know, when you're doing what you love and you've been doing it for so long, it just feels right.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of got used to for 2 years doing these Zoom calls, and when an audience is non-responsive, I feel like that's the most energy I put into a performance to create the entire world. Like it just is so much energy to put it out there. And there's kind of like a rule in theater that it should be repeatable from night to night, but for me, it really does change. If an audience is very emotive and giving you lots of, it changes the warmth in a room. It's a different performance. So it was kind of a surprise, the first audience that we had, to have it there, but everything was easier and theater made more sense having that there. So it was kind of like, oh, this is better. I rehearsed for, you know, it's like I rehearsed this marathon in Kenya and now I get to do it on the ocean side or something.
And what about for you two, the process of this being a new play and new lines coming in and new pieces of dialogue that you had to incorporate into your performance throughout the process. I'm sure there was some early on, and then I know there was some very late in the game as well. Have you worked on a lot of new plays? How does that feel as an actor to have the script change in the middle of the process?
I love doing new works, and I've been in lots of processes where they change at the very last moment, and sometimes it's felt really necessary, and sometimes it's felt like, who has the wheel? Mm-hmm. And I feel I appreciated the script so much when I first came to it, and then having Kait come out for those few days, there were some changes, but they were based in living these characters' lives truthfully. And that fits better. Script changes like that fit better into my brain than ones that are like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to achieve this thing I want, so I'm going to try a radically different tactic. The massaging down and the speaking to an actor in terms of motivation and figuring out what the inner workings of these four lives are, which I think the play is kind of doing already. It just made it easier to have those minor changes that we did.
I would say that I definitely agree with that. And also, having worked on new works before, it's not something that is new to me. And even with everything that you said, there is also something that like shakes you a little bit. But you're like, okay, I finally got these lines down, and we're going to cut that one. Oh, that was my brain link to the next one. Okay, cool. Let's figure it out. So just technically like making that link back. And then also sometimes there are cuts for, we all have our own little favorite lines or favorite moments. And sometimes you have a cut where you're like, oh man, I hate that we don't say that line anymore, And even though like, it's not, not a line that is necessary for the story or anything, it's just like a little moment that we had and enjoyed, and like it got cut. So ho-hum. But again, yeah, I think all of the different cuts and adjustments that were made when Kait arrived definitely allowed us to dive deeper into these characters and to truly understand some bits that were getting sticky for us. So it was a welcome change.
And kind of what Kait was talking about, like a play is so beautifully the words, but there's also an event happening between the words that, you've got to be in the room for, and we've got to be, so sometimes you get a cut and you're like, oh, I love that moment. So where, even though I don't have that language, where can it fit, or where can it overlay on this other moment and still achieve that thing I loved about it?
Yeah, cuts are so challenging, and changes in scripts are so challenging because like it's such a fine line, and you don't want to mess anybody up. And you're also thinking about like, actually, like, are you going to mess somebody up for no reason? And some people don't think about that, I think, but it's something that I feel very aware of. And then also like, there's things that you can see what was for me as the writer. I needed that line to get through an idea in the same way that you're talking about how you have like a line that sort of leads you to the next part of what you know in the play, but the audience doesn't need either of those things sometimes. And so there's this other layer that as you sit in the audience, finally with an audience, you're like, we don't need that. They've already covered all of that information. And it is that space in between that thing, that ineffable thing that of bodies and spaces that you need a little less than you think you do, because it's no longer has to just live on the page or just live in an actor's brain. It just is. And because of that process that everybody has already been through, now the audience can have this like much more refined, streamlined version of it, which is really thrilling. And that's my favorite. I mean, my favorite thing to do is rewrite. I would say that I'm like a very medium writer, and I think I'm a very good rewriter. And I think that process of honing and developing and changing and refining that's my favorite part of my job, especially with an audience.
I love that you said that, Kait, because even in some of the earlier conversations that William and I got to have with you and talking about things that we saw in the script that might use massaging or might, have a shift, we later went and talked about how like not precious you are about the work, and you're like, oh yeah, I hear that, and like, let me just like try to do this on the fly and switch something up very quickly, which is such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful skill to have, especially because, you know, this is a piece that is so close to you.
But it's also, I mean, it's completely a collaboration, and like having actors who spend as much time as you're spending with something is just a gift. Like you and both of you are asking such incredible questions, and I was getting questions through Graham, and then we would talk a little bit more, and it was so thrilling to hear you working through these ideas. And there's something about being the writer where like my job is, and this is only 4 characters, but my job is to have all 4 characters in my brain at all times and to be thinking about overarching arcs and all of that. But like the job of the actor is so connected to, you guys have double jobs, but the job of the actor is normally to play one role and to be like micro focused on that one role and be able to sort of pull you through that. And so I learn so much every time an actor takes me through their arc, because the actor's understanding of that arc becomes much more zeroed in than what I'm ever doing. And so it like listening to that is really exciting, because sometimes like I find things I didn't know were there, or I find mistakes I made, and that process that you have to go through where you have to literally put it in your body tells you things that I don't learn without it.
Hey, I have a question that's sort of process. It might also just be craft, but you know, I first got to know you as a book writer, lyricist on Earthrise, and then I know you to, you know, do books and lyrics, and I just wonder what for you is different, if anything at all, between writing book lyrics or a non-musical play?
I think the difference, there's a lot of differences and there's a lot of similarities. I think the biggest difference for me is that with a play, I'm sort of allowing myself to do something that I want to do alone. And it's something that I want to figure out. And it tends to be a very private question that I want to answer, or a very like something that I have realized myself, and I want to be able to share this very specific, bespoke idea. And it, you know, hopefully it becomes more universal. Like I think this play does eventually, but when I started writing it, it came from a very visceral place where I was like, oh, I literally have never heard anyone talk about how their relationship with their partner changed their relationship with their parent. And it felt like a revelation to me that that was true. And so that was something that I wanted to talk about, but it's very nuanced and very small in some ways. And so then the whole play is trying to say that one thing in a way that never says that out loud. And so then truly the nuance of that is the opposite of what you can do in musicals. And I will credit Brie Loudermilk, who I write a lot with, that she was like, musicals are bad at nuance. And I fight that all the time as a writer because I love nuance. And I think I fight it in the way that I write musicals. But at the beginning and the end of the day, musicals are not very good at nuance, and they're really good at big ideas. And they can totally like groundswell and shift you over to something else and make you feel something so big, but they're not going to do a great job of explaining the hyper small differences between certain little bits. So that's kind of what I use it for, I guess. And then the other thing is that the thing about writing a play for me is that idea of like having one idea that I'm going to get from the beginning of to the end of, that's mine. And that, I guess, is what feels so private about it. And then I bring other people in and I get to collaborate, and that's where I feel at home. But, and so writing plays is always a little bit more challenging for me to get from the beginning to the end without a conversation with anyone. But with musicals, my job is to start bringing people in from the very first thing I'm writing. At the very outset of the job is, can I get one person on board with the idea that I have? can I get 2? Can I get 3 people on board? Like, how quickly can I bring these people in and keep like widening the tent so that more and more and more people have an interest in this and can talk about this and have a perspective on this, and trying to make it as big a thing as I can. But it's all collaborating at the end. Like, that's the part that I love.
You know, on last month's episode of Aurora Connects, we had Natalie Green on as our guest to talk about intimacy. And Natalie is the intimacy director and movement director for this production, and did a remarkable job. And this is a play that has, you know, as you said, nuances and really gets at minute moments between people, and a lot of that is expressed physically. There's a lot of kissing in this play, right? There's a lot of physical connecting in this play, and that was all, you know, very carefully choreographed and thought out throughout the process. And I'm curious about to hear you all talk about, like, Kait writing that, and then Graham, you know, collaborating with Natalie to stage it, and then for the actors, you know, figuring out how to deliver it in a way that that feels you know, both really realistic and natural, but also very comfortable and safe for you. It's such a fascinating field. We had a great conversation about Natalie. I'd just love to hear you all talk about your side of it.
Well, I think it's a play, we've talked about this a lot in rehearsals. It's a play where bodies talk to bodies an awful lot in many different ways. And I think part of that thematically, in terms of what the play has to say, is that, you know, we're not always in control of the things that we're communicating. And, you know, I think Lewis's character says something in the play about the different kinds of silence that there are and why we sometimes have silence. And so, you know, it's such a delight to be able to look at all of the moments in the play where the characters' words are either not available to them or are failing them, and the bodies are the ones that deliver the messages or the needs or the desires that have to be communicated. And, you know, I start by, like, you know, making the space available to the actors to do that work with the assistance of Natalie, because the two of these actors know so well how to create an action and how to listen with their bodies. What was it like for the two of you to have such a long list of moments in the play where words don't function the way that we would like them to, and where the characters' bodies take over?
I think that I've done intimacy work before, and I feel like it's really powerful and allows you kind of a deeper structure around those moments. But I really do think working with Sam has just been so easy. We kind of joked at the beginning of this that we're going to be doing a lot of therapy with this show, talking about our parents and our lovers and our children and it was really true. Like, we all kind of broke down into what our connection to the play was, how we saw ourselves in it. And that really intimate work that is a lot about love and unconditional love and physical touch. And it kind of all compounded into one really easy place for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also William and I had worked together very briefly with actually Dawn on a Zoom reading, again, during Panorama. And we had like one little intimate scene together via Zoom. And it was one of those moments that I was like, oh, cool, I don't know this guy at all, but like we were able to vibe via Zoom, having not met, having not really rehearsed that little scene because it was like such a little small blip in the show. And then to find out that he was the one I was going to be playing against, I was like, oh, this will be fun. Like, maybe we'll actually have chemistry. And immediately we were like, oh, okay, this is going to be easy. Like, this is going to be great. So I think even some of that, of the, I don't want to say nervousness, but some of the extra energy that has to go into building that chemistry or finding that chemistry or understanding each other's bodies, if something isn't already there, has a lot to do with the casting. So good job, y'all. Thanks. Thanks, Don. But I think that a lot of it is that, and as much as, working with Natalie was amazing, and having such a competent intimacy director, and having a director who knows how important it is for the bodies to be speaking as well as the words. There is just something that you can't falsify actual chemistry. And trust me, I have tried it on stage and it does not work. So.
And I have found that intimacy direction has been most useful for me when it's hard, when like, I don't want to do that, or we don't vibe each other. And so having kind of a kinship, a worldview kinship, not to say that we're like these characters, but we were able to examine them and kind of relate to each other about these characters easily. It was like a very easy process.
Yeah.
And Kait, did you spend a lot of time talking to Natalie directly? I'm curious about the relationship between the playwright and the intimacy direction of the play.
We had one meeting partway through the process, and then she was there during the majority of the time that I was there for previews, and I fell pretty hard for her really quickly. I really, really loved her, and I really loved the way she talked about the play, but also just her way of thinking about feelings and space and how those two things interact with each other is something that I found really moving and really beautiful. And I was really excited to be in a conversation with her and have her accessing different ideas that are like coming from a physical place as opposed to coming from an intellectual place, which is where I tend to come from. And so it was really lovely to have her in the room. And Graham said something, we were talking about what the job of a director is. And I think, there's competing theories on this, but if Graham said it was about trust. And that's I don't know, that's a relatively novel idea for directors, that is your job. That trust, I think, between the two of us, and then between you and the intimacy director, and then between the actors. I'm hearing, like, as you talk now, but also just watching the two of you together, there's so much trust there. And I felt it in the set design. It felt like that was just sort of the theme of everything, was that everyone in that space was able to believe that everyone was hearing them, and this like very clear communication and that sense of, let's create a space where anybody can say the thing they need to say, and talk about whatever thing is troubling them or is not working for them. And let's find the solution together, and let's say the thing out loud. And it's such a funny thing, because I have two little kids, and one of the things that I was listening to something, and was talking about the idea of trust, and basically creating these spaces where you can say the scary thing and say the thing that you think you're going to get in trouble for. And if you can say those things, then you can deal with them, and they become not the monster in the corner. And because this play is about inherited trauma, and it's about the ways in which we pass those things down to our kids, like, it feels so helpful that the space that the rehearsal room was the space where everyone could actually try to navigate whatever the elephant in the room was. And so that felt like it was sort of universal there. And I felt like I got to enter into that for those few days that I was in previews, which is another reason I was so like sad I wasn't there the whole time, because it seemed like just such a great place to hang out.
Kait, we do have a question coming in via YouTube. And someone is asking, I wonder why Kait decided to not have the spank in a scene, but have it rather take place via dance.
Oh, it doesn't take place in the play at all. Actually, the thing that happens, we see this dance, and the dance is connected to this collective flow that we talked about earlier in the play, and it's not quite as literal as actually watching him slap her. I think that it's his own private rage, and not knowing where to put that and not knowing how to deal with that. And those things that the manifestation of that can turn into the monster that oozes out, which is one of the things that they talk about somewhere else. So I think that it's the actual slap is not the rage, it's the manifestation of not knowing where to put the rage, and the manifestation of not knowing what to do. So we never see that scene because we never see a scene between Miranda and Baldwin, because that's kind of not the point. And it was really intentional that Miranda doesn't remember it, because it was his thing. It actually wasn't bad. The thing he did was not terrible. It was a mistake, and you shouldn't have done it, obviously, in my opinion. But I think that it was a mistake, and we make mistakes as humans, and we can repair from those mistakes. And I think one of the things that is really interesting in the play, I think, is the way in which he sort of sees Risa's the fault of Risa in his relationship with his daughter, and like how things went wrong because of Risa. But Risa also is responsible for the relationship he does have with his daughter, and the fact that she doesn't remember that, and that's not what she held on to. She remembered all kinds of other things that happened afterwards. And so I think that it becomes more complicated than that. And I wanted to be able to talk about things that happen in real life, like abortions. 1 in 4 women have abortions. Like it doesn't have to become an abortion play just because there's an abortion in it. It doesn't have to become a play about domestic abuse because one person gets slapped once and it's a mistake. Like, I think sometimes we create taboos around these things. And so then they seem so scary and so terrible that they're not part of real life. And I think that instead we have to deal with the fact that these are a part of real life, and they happen to more people than we think. And it doesn't mean that people are damaged goods because of it.
Thank you. And Graham, I realized that perhaps you hadn't had the opportunity to say all you wanted to say in response to Josh's question. So I guess clearly the role of the director is to let the actors and the playwright talk. But if you wanted to revisit that question and chime in about staging and working with Natalie and
I don't need to revisit that question. I mean, I think what you've intuited is totally right. I think that, if you had a play that had, a scene where there were 30 actors on stage, a director's job would be totally different. And it would be really about managing what each picture was moment by moment. But in a play like this with 2 incredibly talented actors, I knew that because the actors are the thing that this is, the actors and their work is the event that this piece of theater really lifts up, that I knew that what their instincts were and their choices and their discoveries were going to be the things that had the most depth and longevity for the run of the show to really tell the story in the most powerful way possible. And of course, like it's always better as a director to work with collaborators who are going to surprise you so that you're delighted every day that you go to rehearsal. And so that's how I understood the work of this show, is to really make the space trustworthy enough so that we could all take risks, whether that was a designer or the playwright or the actors, and then to shape and then to work with their choices. Yeah, I kind of feel like Kait, I'm a much better editor than I am a first draft writer. And so, I really love the process of starting to shape the choices that William and Sam were bringing in every day. But I do want to say about this question that came through YouTube, the center of the play, and maybe we haven't said this yet, but the very center of this play is a scene that I think lasts maybe 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which is a dance sequence where there are no words at all. And two of the characters in the play are dancing in this collective flow kind of dance practice that they're both engaged with. And it feels really important that this dance, where we infer some of these things about the characters, where that audience member asked about where the spank comes from. And I feel like that's kind of like the center of the play, because everything about these two characters kind of comes to the surface in a really distilled and essentialized way in this moment. And it kind of reverberates throughout the whole play, this moment of bodies talking to bodies. And as a result, we are doing the play, the actors are barefoot for the entire play to remind us that all of the play kind of comes out of this central moment in the play that is a dance moment. And so it's a way of kind of looking through the lens of that one moment at the whole play, that we can get a lot of ideas about what's being revealed, how the characters operate, and what their obstacles are all happening. I mean, Kait writes very, very economical scenes that are kind of thrilling 10-minute rides. I think most of the scenes in the play are about like 8 to 10 minutes, but this scene is like a 3.5-minute ride that kind of is a whole play in itself. And I think it's one of the things that's so cool to see the actors give us all these layers of character, and then without language give us all the more character in a very, very short amount of time with their bodies.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that is a nice place to wrap up this episode of Aurora Connects. Thank you all so much for sharing the play with us, for doing such wonderful work, and for joining us on Connects today.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much. So Josh, before we close out, we have our advocacy for the week.
Yeah. Today we are giving a call out to the Parent Artist Advocacy League for Arts and Media, PAAL. They are a national community resource hub and solutions generator for individuals with caregiver responsibilities and institutions who strive to support them. PAALtheater.com.
Great. And I will just add that PAL is having their Centering Humanity International Summit coming up shortly here, December 1st through 3rd. It is an online summit. I will be participating as one of their speakers. I'm a chief ambassador for the Bay Area chapter of PAL. So I do encourage folks to go to PAALtheater.com / the regular / summit for more information.
And as I mentioned at the top, tickets for Father-Daughter are on sale now. We are in performances, 6 performances a week. We have subscriptions on sale as well. If you want to check out this play and the rest of the plays in our 30th season, you can go to auroratheater.org. And while you're there, you can click on that donate link at the top right and help us keep doing what we do. Thank you so much for all of your support.
And again, I'll just restate that we love hearing from you. So reach out anytime at connects@auroratheater.org. That is connects@auroratheater.org. Next month, we return with an episode on dramaturgy. So keep your eyes out for that e-blast guest to be announced.
Well, this is a good episode. Thank you so much, Dawn.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks to all of our wonderful guests, and thanks to you, our audience, for staying connected. Have a wonderful weekend and a season of gratitude and Thanksgiving.